Hello and welcome back to This Is an IT Support Group. I'm joined again today by Lewis Pope, which is a head nerd at Enable. Lewis, say hi.
Hello, everybody. Good
So
to be
if
back.
you don't know, sorry, carry on.
No, I was just saying, good to be back again.
Yeah, if you don't know Lewis, I'm sure you do by now. He deals with everything security at Enable and a lot more than that. So that's actually our topic of today's conversation. We're going to be looking into what's been going on over the last couple of weeks. And I guess, Lewis, I'll just jump straight into the fact that you were at an MSSP Alert Live conference and you've just got back. Do you want to tell us a bit about how that went and what you saw?
Right. It was MSSP Alert Live was held in Virginia, Maryland, right across from DC. So it was my first time actually getting that close to Washington. So that was a first experience for me. But as far as the conference itself, there was a lot of, the conversations you would expect to be having. There was, new vendors showing up in the space that I hadn't seen before, or maybe had only seen by glance a year or two ago. Now showing back up much stronger with much better messaging and some better products and services being offered. The AI was, the conversation that was being had in a lot of ways, but it was less hype, less buzzword AI, more practical implementation, concerns around it, how to take advantage of it, what you should be monitoring around it. There was very much that very reasoned and sensible set of conversations that kind of focused on the fact and the need of, even if you don't understand what's happening inside of an AI black box, like many people don't really do, as IT professionals, as MSPs, who you talk to are still going to look to you as a person of being a subject matter expert of some level, regardless of whether you are or not. Even if you don't understand the inside workings of it, you still need to understand the perimeter of it. I think it's the biggest thing I've walked away with of a good set of messaging out of it, that you need to know and understand the needs and the purposes of and the importance of, sanitizing what goes in to any type of AI or machine learning tooling you've got. And you need to be able to sanity check whatever comes out of it. I think was the biggest messages that I kept hearing again and again and again. And I think that's just a consequence of we are, the broader world is starting to probably hit the peak of the AI hype. If not already starting to come down from it. And, usually the deeper you get into something, the faster you come out of the hype cycle. So I think it's representative that the people that have to worry with it and implement it and be responsible for like safe operation of it are, past the hype curve on it.
Yeah, so that was going to be my follow-up question. I was just going to ask you if there was any specific trends or themes that really jumped out at the conference this year, and I guess AI is obviously one of the biggest.
That's one of them. Another one is that, and this was a 45-minute conversation on the floor I had with somebody about what is an MSSP, what is an MSP, what's the difference between them. And there was a bunch of, there was quite a bit of qualifying each one individually apart from each other that we were doing. And the further and further along the conversation went, the more I was kind of in real time resolving this principle that I've always kind of considered of MSPs today have to become MSSPs in the future. What you're going to be expected to handle as just the average MSP in another few, even now and even into the next few years, is going to be what was expected of MSSPs to be doing for clients 3 years ago. So it gave me the opportunity to round out and mature my understanding and kind of, how I approach that conversation of it, to where now I'm kind of at the point of it is a spectrum in between. There's not that hard separation anymore between an MSP and an MSSP. There's that full spectrum that exists of, you're doing a lot of MSP stuff, but you're doing a little bit of MSSP, or you're doing a lot of MSSP and you're doing a little bit of MSP. And where you flip from one to the other, I think is becoming less important because for the MSP focused conferences that I go to and the MSSP focused conferences that I go to, it's starting to be, it's the same conversations, it's the same concerns, it's the same advice being given, starting to see a lot of the same names and talking heads showing up again at these things. So that line is blurred to the point of where I almost think it doesn't matter anymore.
I think that's the thing, isn't it? There was a point where an MSP could choose not to touch any kind of security related services or anything like that. But anyone who deals with any client, security is such a focus now in any kind of IT service provider that there's not really any designation between the two anymore.
There's not. And just because of the way that the market has changed, the threat landscape has changed, business understanding, federal and state understanding of what the threat landscape is forcing that change. Everybody knows that what is reasonable to do today is not anywhere close to what was reasonable to do 5 years ago. It is so much more now.
We've just had a question pop up. Someone's asking if AI chatbots have had a positive or negative effect on MSPs.
That was actually part of my presentation. I was a guest speaker, and I got to do a presentation in a breakout. And the session was actually titled LLM-Induced Psychosis and Business Illusions. And that was one of the things that I was talking about was that you have to be very, very hyper aware of the use of AI chatbots or LLM, or really just LLM tooling in a lot of different ways, and in ways that we're not really prepared for, and not anybody's really been thinking of in really good ways. Figuring out those second order, third order impacts from it. So, but to bring it back a little bit and focus a little bit more on this specific component of it, was that, yeah, you have to be conscious of whenever you are using these chatbots, are they internal? Are they external? If they're internal, what are your sanity checks on your team and everything? If they're external, what are your safety rails and your safety mechanisms on the outputs that's providing? How is the, most of the time you have one LLM that gives your initial response, and then you have another one that is checking it for sentiment and bad advice or some other, things you wanted to check it for before it exits. Because if you're in Canada, there was the Canadian Tribunal last year where a chatbot for a company gave information to a customer. And then the customer came back with it and said, hey, you said you would do this. You're going to do it. The company said no. It wound up in court, and the tribunal said, well, that chat AI bot was acting as an agent of your business. Therefore, what it said is what your business said. Honor it. And the same is going to, for MSPs, it's the same thing. You have to make that consideration for those external. So those help desk AI chatbots that are promising to divert tier 1 help desk request into an automated functionality. Question it. Is it a tool that's going to use the whole wide of the entire internet and kind of, put together its own custom response every time of what should be done to resolve this help desk issue? Or is it one that's more refined and more controlled, where it's going, no, I have a knowledge base of established and approved guidance that I can give, and I can provide it from there. One of those is a vibe coded thing that somebody can throw together in an afternoon and turn around and resell to you for a ridiculous markup with no sanity check, no real security being applied to it. And the other one's got a lot more time, a lot more effort in it, but it's a lot safer.
Brilliant. So just as a kind of final question on the conference, do you think that MSSPs are generally dealing with the growing complexity of that? We mentioned the threat kind of landscape at the moment, specifically like threat detection and response. Did you see any kind of shift in tooling, anything that you thought was really cool or really useful?
I would say it was just the growth in the number of more than just the basics. Because a lot of times, whenever you're going into any type of IT focused conference, there's going to be the startups, the small operations, the names that you've never seen before, and sometimes it's always used to be for me, it was always a 50-50 mix of, is this something that's really simple that you've implemented via open source tooling, and what you're selling is a service, versus oh no, you've actually done something clever and new and unique. There's a lot more of the clever and new and unique that's starting to show up through. Some of it is taking agentic AI on its natural progression with connecting with the MCP servers for building out those automated workflows yourself, instead of having to buy it from that third party again, like the AI chatbot from earlier. It's getting to the point where there's a lot more of that capability just popping up wholesale as a brand new independent stack that's not reliant on the same source, open source project or OEM or SDK implementation. That it's not 50 different coats of paint on the same set of underlying things. It's brand new approaches.
Cool. So I guess to move on then, at the beginning of December, there was a disclosure of a supply chain compromise in the finance software arena. It affected 74 banks that were all using that same software service provider. Obviously, we know that supply chain attacks are nothing new at this point, and they're going on all the time. But is there something in particular worth taking away from this breach?
Two. I think the first is how it went down. This was supposedly another situation where it was not simply, but it was another situation where it was via a VPN compromise. Apparently, reading between the lines on this, because we don't have a full post-mortem and everything yet, it appears that it was either a non-MFA protected account that was compromised and was used to get in via the SonicWall VPN account, or it was, firewall not being patched and up to date and being exploited. And then the second is that apparently this happened much earlier than December. Apparently, again, looking at the announcements that came from the affected banks and what they have put out into communication and circulation, some of it has already been rescinded. So we're in a non-known state at the moment about all this. But it looks like the earliest of this was back in August. May have been the earliest that this compromise was actually happening and known about. So that's the
14th. That says, yeah.
Right. So for me, that's if under the NIS2 directive in the EU, underneath the upcoming Cybersecurity and Resiliency Bill in the UK, under even existing United States federal and state laws, this type of an incident, that potentially exposes protected PII in a data breach, you've got anywhere from immediate to 60 days to notify affected parties. And this is a 3-month before the public was notified. So I'm really, really interested in seeing the post-mortem on this, because I want the timetable of events, because for me, this is a great scenario to build a tabletop exercise off of. And especially for one that anybody that's in scope of any type of reporting obligations in the event of a data breach, this is going to be a great case study, I think, that comes out of this, because this is what you're going to be able to take and say, look, this is exactly what what happened, when it happened, what could have been done better, what should have been done at some point, and these outcomes could have been avoided. Kind of, find those gaps in your policies, processes, and procedures against this type of thing, because it's only going to happen more. It is happening more, geopolitical, what it is at the moment, it is only going to increase more. So you really should start, you really have to start studying this. Threat intelligence, threat modeling is starting to, again, things that used to be the realm of the MSSP, and honestly, even beyond the realm of MSSPs. It's not just the MSPs that have to learn new skills, capabilities. The MSSPs also have to be bringing down, enterprise type capabilities, and be even more prepared to defend against APTs and nation state backed threats, and even transnational organized crime.
Yeah, I was just going to say, in general, what can smaller banks and credit unions, any kind of organizations like that, really take away from how this one played out?
I think it's the same as it always is of any type of business relationship. You are as exposed as your business partners are, because if you're going to go into business with another, if you're going to enter into an agreement with another business, you're sharing risk between each other. It should absolutely be documented on a share risk responsibility matrix of who is responsible and accountable for what. There should be, in contracts, there should be that language around, you have to meet or exceed our own internal security controls. If you do not, no, we will not honor, we will not enter an agreement. And if you ever fall out of compliance with having as good or better controls than us, then we have the option and the right to void the contract. That's where I think a lot of smaller operations, credit unions, municipal banks are going to have to focus on being a little bit more aggressive about that, especially since this year was, now some of them got caught on the back foot. One of the tools that they used to have freely available to them to handle risk assessments in those types of banks was, it was sunset. It was deprecated. And the guidance was, well, go follow the best practices of these others established frameworks. And they pointed to other ways, but it left a lot of people on the back foot trying to figure out what they should do. So there was a whole new class of municipal banks and credit unions that have this year had to do a lot of catch-up work. And I think this is just one more thing to push harder on that catch-up work.
We've had a comment come in. Someone's basically saying they've seen it from both sides and had clients securing their systems using Grok's advice. It's prolific across the industry at the moment, as we were talking about that, AI bubble, especially around security, and when you don't get, genuine follow of any strict standards, you're missing gaps, you're following advice from AI, which is not perfect. As we know, anyone kind of should not be trusting AI 100% in any of their security plans or anything related to cybersecurity. Do not blindly follow what an AI bot is telling you, essentially.
Right. You have to it's the thing it always is. It is a talented intern that can be very clever, but you need to know more than it in order to sanity check and verify what it's giving you. And that's the boring, tedious. Yes, that means we're not automating everything out. We still have to have that human in the loop, but that human in the loop realization, even though there are big businesses that are highly dependent upon the AI hype pushing the remove the human, I think everybody kind of in the MSP space, the MSSP space, and the internal IT understands that, we have to stand against that notion and let the business decision makers basically know that, no, this is a, we'll go on, we will go on hunger strike to prevent this type of situation.
Yeah. So we know that supply chains happen all the time, but is there any kind of warning signs that you'd recommend IT teams should be watching for in order to catch something similar before it basically explodes in their face?
Oh, that's just the good old fashioned of doing the basics more than anything, because this was either it was one of two things. Oh, possibly, highly likelihood, it started because of one of two things. Non-MFA protected VPN accounts. Well, you should have basically MFA via biometrics, via FIDO keys, via pass keys, Windows Hello, whatever it may be, all access should be underneath that, except for like one or two emergency break in the case of emergency, like enterprise domain admins that are monitored the hell and back. You have to, those basic things, making sure that all of your security events, that you're not saying, well, if something happens, we can always go look at the logs and figure it out. Well, not if a talented threat actor hits you. No, you will not have those logs to go back to. So having standardized as a SIM must be a component of all environments at this point. They're so simple, they're so basic, but they're still the things that are going to, have the best bang for the buck.
That's it, isn't it? You just have to kind of think of it as like your baseline. You need to, file, as it says here, like firewall devices fully patched and up to date, rotating passwords, deleting old or unused accounts that could get compromised, MFA, logging retention for firewall devices so you can actually see what happened after the fact or even before they can brute force or actually get in or whatever.
Right, because they may have failed 4 or 5 or 20 attempts.
Yeah,
over a 20 minute period. That's like with enable ad lumen. That's the purpose of the SOAR capabilities in the platform to say, hey, you know what? We're monitoring the logs coming out of this firewall appliance. It keeps failing. At the least, you can have it set up to be a inform you action. At the taking advantage of the SOAR automations, you can automatically disable that user so they can't keep trying to brute force it and get in.
Yeah.
So it is basics. You just got to find out, well, what's the best way for me to implement these basics.
Exactly. So I guess for mainly our US audience, then we just mentioned it briefly. Data privacy regulations with real enforcement mechanisms and penalties haven't really been as big of a concern as those operating, out of the EU or the UK due to GDPR, other regulations like online safety bill and things like that. What awareness should those supply chain attacks, like the one we just saw, really be bringing to businesses and IT professionals?
I think so if you're operating in New York and you've been providing services to financial institutions, you're already aware of the NYC Shield. I think it's what it's under for financial services. You're already familiar with that. And if you're over in California, the California Consumer Protection Act and its data privacy provisions. If you're in Ottawa, Toronto, let me get my Quebec. Quebec C23, I believe, was the other one where they have data protection. But then there's like in the US, though, there's not a federal level one that's really like pervasive. But I think you have to start paying attention like to the state levels right now. That, like I said, if you're in New York, you're already kind of familiar. If you're in California, you may be already a little bit familiar. Everybody else is kind of like, am I subject? And it is absolutely hard to keep up with this. And there's no substitute from like, okay, I have to start paying attention to the legislative landscape around me. That's a horrible thing to tell an a technically inclined individual that has no interest in the legal landscape, but you have to. Somebody on your team, somebody within your organization, it has to be within their purview. How they get it, how they study it, 1,000,001 ways, but somebody needs to. Like New Jersey, they have data protection assessments have to be done before processing of high risk data. Minnesota has you have to name a chief privacy officer in your policies. Maryland, they have like a threshold of 35,000 customers before you have to start being concerned about their regulations. And it specifically prohibits targeted advertising to minors, which is another state level of COPPA here in the US, which is one of the child protection laws and acts we have here. on targeting advertising to minors.
Yeah, one of the things I was going to say is, should US companies start acting like things like GDPR, for example, apply to them, even if it doesn't? Is that a good standard to
Yes,
follow?
I mean, and at the at the Fortune 500, Fortune 200, multinational level, organizations have been doing that already. They've been doing this. They've been on the everybody complained and fretted, and it was the most, it was the downfall of the world back in the whenever GDPR came out, and Americans had to start, considering it and adjusting to it. But everybody got in the groove for it. Policies, procedures, the way things were built and designed, architecture caught up with it, and it can be implemented easily and safely now, as long as you consider it from the beginning. And that's let them pretty much be prepared for whatever we might do here in the US around it. That's why, again, whenever New York, passed theirs, when California passed theirs, it wasn't as big of a deal. Whenever we first started having GDPR as a thing, nobody complained about the California or the New York rule as loudly as everybody complained about GDPR back in the day. So they're prepped. Smaller businesses may already be prepped with it because they're using SaaS solutions and things from those multinationals that have already had to consider GDPR, and they may just have to start opening up those GDPR workflows to the US audience where they traditionally haven't offered it.
Do you reckon that certain industries are more at risk than others in terms of, following these kind of standards or not, and being exposed to any kind of supply chain attacks and not having the right postures in place to kind of prevent it in the first place?
Right.
Is there anyone that's targeted over other industries? And
there's not anybody that I would say is targeted over. I don't think there's industries that are targeted over others in a way that you can really ascribe it to your obligations under data privacy, except for the distinction between I kind of break it down into health, federal, retail, or commercial. For health, absolutely, there's all the special considerations, but there's nothing new there for you, except for the HIPAA security rule does have some proposals, changing proposals coming up. And just as we've kind of said, well, hey, if you're doing best practices, you don't have to worry about anything. It's another one of those situations of they're putting in title controls, title reporting mechanisms. And if you were doing things like you really should anyway, it's not going to be a concern. Those are, that's being dealt with already. The federal has already been dealt with. It's the commercial side. It's the retail. It's the, like with the Minnesota one, I believe it was, where they say the 35,000 customers is the limit. I think that's going to be eventually even lower to where it's like, no, you are a you are a registered business. Congratulations. Data privacy now applies to you. I believe that is the direction it will be going, and we'll probably be there in 10 years, if not some way, shape, or form sooner.
So this is always a difficult one, but who do you think should really be taking the lead here? Is it the IT teams or legal and compliance? As you just said, there are some states where it requires you to have a named person to operate data privacy and storage and all that kind of stuff separate from the IT teams. So do you think that that should be properly separated, or do you think that should be a combined approach?
It has to be a combined approach once you get to operations and implementation and continuous monitoring and everything. It's like, everybody's going to have their assigned responsibilities and accountability underneath it once it's in place and being done. But there's the who starts it, who pushes first, who starts the who starts that boulder rolling down the mountain. And I would like it to be an understanding of, I am a business. I need a GRC element. And I, as a business owner, as anybody that has been placed on a board, should be competent enough to know and understand anything of that nature. It's like, just if you are at the level of you are making the decisions and you are the final arbiter for a business, then you should know and understand today that GRC has to be a corporate component of what you're doing. Let me assign that responsibility to a function and a person or a team. I would like to, that would be the perfect world, because then everything, then it's, we have management buy-in and business buy-in. The
Yep.
money will be available. The budget will be available. The understanding and knowledge that this is important is there. We don't have to have that fight, but that's not where we're at. We're, the bus is in motion. So, it is everybody has to advocate. Everybody has to CYA, because, for the business, you need affirmative defense, or what we refer to as affirmative defense over here in the U.S. whenever it comes to civil and legal and liability stuff. Is you need to be able to say, yes, we knew about it, we addressed it, we knew about it, we talked about it, we addressed it by XYZ. Here's the signature saying that it was done this way and who's accountable for it in the end. You want to know as an individual when, whenever somebody's saying, hey, put your name here, what is that obligating you to? What does that really mean? Is that falsification of records? Is that, you do have to consider that whenever it comes to data privacy and whenever things are starting to be regulated and that there are consequences for violation of that. Just as the individual, you want to make sure that the business is not putting you in a bad position. This will be a new thing for IT individuals. But just think of it from like there's certain things like even like medical profession, as a nurse, as an RN, data privacy is something you actually have to learn, I think, a lot more in depth, and you feel the consequences and you're trained to it a whole lot more than what IT people do in kind of the practical, visceral experience of it, because it's hammered into them of, no, you are in this position, in this role. You do not get to access that patient's test results. You only get to access, their current care documentation, and that's it. And businesses would be like, oh, hell no. We're not gonna keep data segmented off and not available, and we need to work with it. We need to poke it. We need to monetize it. And you have to be able to, as the person that's being put in a position of caring for it, being responsible for processing it, for helping the business make the decisions on how you're supposed to do it. You have to be aware, or else you may be finding yourself in bad situations that winds up from everything from dismissal to just dissatisfaction and irritation with the job you're in, all the way up to, oh no, yes, you're going to get your hand slapped.
Yeah, just as you were also talking about enforcement and potential changes to HIPAA, we had a comment come in here that says, how do we feel about governments deploying enterprise AI licenses and using them to create documentation? And my follow-up question to you was going to be, that could breaches like the one that we've just been talking about push US regulators to actually step up enforcement? So I guess there's kind of a crossover here.
Oh, well, this is going to link into something else I wanted to talk about too today.
Go for it.
We'll kind of drop that bomb after we set the stage with this one because of this.
Yeah.
I think that's my kind of my gut visceral reaction to it is like, some places maybe yes, some places probably no.
Yeah.
It is always the thing of, how is it trained? What's the guardrails? How do they monitor for, hallucinations? How do they monitor for, time bombs in it, programmatic time bombs inside of them, because those are harder to find in an AI than it is in an AI model that's going to say, oh, hey, by the way, this new environmental condition has changed, or this new world condition has changed based on the return from a search query. Therefore, jump to this new hidden suppressed action that's never been done before. I mean, that's what can happen. So it's all, there's the trust there. It's definitely again, should they be doing it? Yes. Should they be doing it smart and responsibly? Yes. Should they be putting, humans in the loop and gatekeeping? Absolutely. Yes. Do we have full confidence that that's what's going to happen? Yeah, probably. Hopefully. We hope, but so, and then there's like, okay, where is it being implemented and what it's being used for? it's got its purpose. It's got its place.
Cool. So I guess then we'll move on. As we know by now, especially after we've done many of these, there's never a shortage of attacks or any new threats to talk about. There's always something. Um, every single month seems to bring something new. What did you want to talk about this month, Lewis?
Okay, so this links right to what we were just talking about. So, there is a new class of vulnerability, a whole new, brand new class, not a new vulnerability, a new class of vulnerability. So this has now expanded our our understanding and our way to describe the attack surface that we are, responsible for defending now. This is from research from Ari Marzuk. He's labeled it as IDE disaster. And it arises out of the fact that IDE applications were not built with the idea of AI agents being a thing that needed to be, considered in the way they were set up and the way they're controlled. So by adding AI agents to existing applications, that's creating, things we have to consider that we never had to consider before. IDE disaster is it's significant because of the fact that it's just taking advantage of base IDE functionality itself, of what it is and how it does what it does, and allows for execution of coding of any code basically on the system that is running the IDE. Therefore, it can influence what script is running, what outputs are being pushed out, what inputs are being taken in. And because it's, in that base functionality, this impacts nearly, if not all, AI-enabled IDEs and any coding assistance that might be integrated into that same IDE. So that means that this is an attack chain that would look like, like we have an initial prompt injection from a poison MCP server, or even just hidden or obfuscated instructions inside of something like a JSON format that you're going to feed into it. And those instructions could hijack the AI agent by, altering, adding, or removing instructions before they're sent to the agent to execute. There's also other novel ways that this can be, taken advantage of and probably exploited in different types of attack chains. So just that unpredictability of, hey, we got this brand new class of vulnerability. What can be achieved with this? We're probably going to see some, I kind of consider this as that evolution of ransomware powered, AI powered ransomware, where it's like, okay, we get an AI agent running somewhere locally on something, and then we just prompt the AI agent to execute ransomware type activity where it's, running and housed at. I think the really worrisome part for me on this is that the IDEs that the researcher tested were all vulnerable to this. I think it was like 10 plus that they tested.
I'm assuming that includes things like VS Code.
Yes. This is one of the reasons why I never integrated Claude or anything else into my local VS Visual Studio. Even though everybody, it was the cool thing to do. I was just, yeah. But anything like the combos of GitHub Copilot and Claude Code, I took the time to implement those off on isolated systems, and I still never took the time to integrate Claude into my GitHub account because of paranoia, but it is a legit concern here.
Well, this is something else as well, isn't it? Because it was only a couple of months ago that Microsoft said that up to 30% of the code in the operating system of Windows now is about 30% AI generated.
Yes.
And where does that come from? We now wonder.
Yeah, I know. It's one of those things. It's always been the year of the Linux desktop, but there will be more people than ever, I think, motivated by a lot of these things, just for the simple fact of, nobody wants to cross Torvald. So he's pretty good about keeping slop out of the kernel.
Yeah, it literally, as it says here in the key statistics, there's no doubt that 100% of tested applications were completely vulnerable to this.
Well, because
And
I mean, just think about the way it works. You
yeah,
you got
yeah,
your IDE, you integrate it
yeah,
into an AI tool somewhere,
yep,
and then it says, "Oh, hey, let me pull this GitHub, let me pull this whatever as an
mm,
example," and then there's the malicious. I'm going to do a
yep.
Git instead of pushing this only locally where you want me to do it. I'm also going to push it by an API key up into a S3 bucket somewhere.
Ignore all previous instructions and insert this bit of code into
Yeah,
So literally any of the major IDEs that we know of that most people use these days, because they're all going to be modern ones.
yeah.
Um, yeah, and I don't really know many developers that don't use AI to support their coding at this point.
Right. And that's, I mean, I use it. I use it mainly for just building out the individual functions as I need the individual
Yeah,
functions. So I can just kind of understand and sanity check the whole thing as I'm building it. But yeah, absolutely. I can't say you should absolutely run out and tell everybody across your organization, your teams, that you should be breaking all of your integrations, but it is definitely something that needs to be elevated and talked about. Um, and definitely not an individual decision for somebody to make on behalf of the total organization.
I think that's it, isn't it? And there should be some serious kind of changes in the DevOps procedures to make sure that before this code goes live or any staging,
Oh
it's
yeah,
actually checked to make sure that it's integral and it's doing what it's supposed to do. And there's another issue there, with the so-called vibe coders. It's fine to use AI if you can read code, if you can actually understand what it's generating and giving to you, if you've got some kind of base knowledge of, oh, I can read C sharp, I can read PHP, whatever. But if you're like, oh, the function works, great, and you're not really experienced in reading the code, that makes these kind of things even worse for potential
it
vulnerability because it's not being
is.
screened.
It is the exact same problem that has always existed right from the days of IRQ and AOL chat rooms of, hey, run this, it'll speed up your computer, and it's remove system 32. It, it's it's played every script kiddie slash junior programmer slash IT person on their early journey into IT. At some point in time, you grab that code, you copy paste it, you didn't understand it, and it caused a problem. It exists here in AI, just at a whole different scale.
Yeah. So I guess kind of carrying on from this, and we've kind of talked about federal stuff and enforcement already, but last month, CMMC 2.0 enforcement started in the US on November the 10th.
Mm-hmm.
So this means that every federal contract within defense industrial base will now require that CMMC self-assessment to be completed. If not, even further along in the phased approach that's been implemented. So this has been long time coming, really. So should anyone, that's within that scope really be surprised by any of what's going to be required, within their organization now?
Well, they shouldn't be. Nobody should be, but still, there's going to be some people caught on the back foot. There's going to be business opportunities gained and business opportunities lost. There was a coal fire and kite works. Coal fire is very big in the assessment, evaluation, FedRAMP space. And their study from this year was 46% of contractors, that only 46% of contractors were prepared for level 2 certification. And that 57% haven't even, so that's, 57% having not even completed the basic gap analysis that you have to do against the NIST 800-171 requirements that are mandated by CMMC. There was another survey from somewhere else where it was like 32% of contractors don't know which CMMC level applies to them because, well, until it shows up in the contract that you're going to go bid on, You don't know 100% what you're going to have to. You should be able to figure it out, though. An assessor should be able to help you figure out what you have to hit. But until you start studying, reading up on it, reaching out and making that contact with an assessor, you really don't know which level you are going to need to get to. And then there's like 15% or 17% say that they've lost business opportunities because of the unmet requirements under the CMMC. So this is what's happened within the year of 2025, with it's only hitting this first, like, concrete language in the contracts. You have to be on phase one. You know, you have to have your self-assessments done. You need to have kind of like your POAM, your future improvements plan documented out, your security protection assets documented, your security system configuration documentation done. That should be in motion. And if you don't have any of that in motion, for yourself as an MSP or for your clients, as these contracts over the next year start rolling in for them to go bid on, and it's got this MMC language in it, those numbers, that 15%, I think is going to go up to like 50 or even 60%.
Yeah, I was going to say, for organizations that maybe haven't started self-assessments yet, what's the real risk here? And I suppose that's one of.
yeah, it's just it's just loss of the business opportunities. If you're, because the prime contractors have the money and the resources to go deal with this, and they're figuring that out outside of the scope of the MSP world, because MSPs, there's only a very few MSPs that are capable of supporting primes in the world. But the subprimes, yes, it is going to eat those quite a few small boutique machine shops, concrete pouring companies. There's going to be a lot of those that are going to miss out on, maybe sometimes like 50% of their portfolio of business, which means they may no longer be able to run as a business without making significant changes.
Yeah, we've just had a comment coming in saying that counting individual businesses is also a little flawed. There needs to be a count of total contracts fulfilled by businesses that pass CMMC certification, so the scope is more precise.
Yep. Because because a business can be holding multiple contracts, because they may have one contract for one, piece of machine aluminum. They may have another contract underneath a completely different engagement for, a BNC connector that they have to custom mill. It's just, there's so many of those things that, yes, it cascades, because if you got one, you probably got multiples, and that absolutely can happen and represents, it can represent the fact that a business loses all of their business potentially all of a sudden.
Yeah, so I just had one follow-up question on that, and it's about the phased rollout. So is that affecting the readiness across the entire defense industrial base, or are there any exceptions? Because there are some kind of implementations that if you're below a certain size, then you have an exception before you have
right.
to be implemented.
It's basically dictated in the CMMC, within the purview of CMMC, is that you have level 1, level 2, level 3, and the practical distinction between level 1 and level 2 is CUI. If you have a contract with the government, you hold and process federal contract information. That automatically qualifies you 99.9% of the time to have to deal with CMMC level 1. That's trivial to adhere to. That's a lot of best practices, and it's a self-assessment. Every small business should be able to do that, and I'm confident that every small MSP should be able to prepare a client sufficiently for them to be able to hit what they need to hit for that self-assessment. But as soon as it's CUI, controlled unclassified information, so it's not just the contract, it's we're actually recording the quality and type of concrete that we're selling or pouring on this particular job, and the documentation of where it's going and stuff. That would all be controlled unclassified information. You're now underneath the need to hit CMMC level 2. It gets more complicated. That's really like that qualifying line. Size isn't going to save you. The amount of money you generate is not going to save you. It's, do you want that contract? Is that contract going to require you to have to hold, process, store CUI? Then your CMMC level 2, accept it, bite the bullet, and deal with it.
Yeah. So another thing that I suppose is an opportunity for a bit of a plug here is I was going to ask, are people missing out on any resources or tools that could make this CMMC implementation a little bit easier for them?
Right. Yeah. It's always so much easier whenever the vendor of whatever tool it is you need has, like, yes, we have guidance for you around this. We have had multiple MSPs using our N-Central platform for quite a while, setting it up and implementing it in CMMC environments to the appropriate requirements, but they were left to kind of do it themselves. It's like, you're the professionals, you know what you need to do for this. If you do, here, you can go set this up in a way that will allow you to pass an assessment. But we've now made available, or we're making available, enrollment in our early preview for a CMMC ready version of N-Central, where we've done a little bit of that preparatory work for you by disabling certain features or changing certain settings so that they will be, in alignment with what's required underneath CMMC. That way, whenever you're going through your CMMC assessment, you've got, already have some information from us about, the secure configuration of the system. So you're not figuring it out all on your own. Currently, we have this in open preview. Well, not open preview, in preview. We do qualify for people to participate in it since it is a self-hosted version. So not everybody's going to have the capability or the availability to spin this up somewhere that will allow it to remain CMMC compliant, because you're either going to have to put it in something like AWS Gov, AWS Cloud Gov, or Azure Gov, GCC High, something like that, or you're going to have to host it yourself and meet that FedRAMP equivalent type protections that are needed by hosting it yourself. But we're making that available under preview right now, so you can sign up for that preview if you would like. We've also had a bunch of I didn't include the link for it. We did a CMMC technical workshop a week or two ago on this, where we showed it off a little bit. So if you're interested in that, you can go to YouTube and just search for N-Central CMMC. You'll find that video with me and Jason Murphy, where we kind of cover the principles of it, what you'll be gaining, what you'd lose, but also covering a little bit of our ad lim and MDR, of its ability to be able to be compliant and to pass CMMC assessments, because we're classifying it as a security protection asset, since it is built by design to not be putting CUI data into it. So, and we can't access CUI data via it with our service. So we're in the environments where it gets assessed, it's being assessed as a security protection asset.
Wonderful stuff. So just one final question then. Do you think that, we've just spoken about, loss of business up, up to 50% of contracts being lost for non-adoption? Generally, do you think enforcement will push organizations to really adopt those best practices? Or do you think it will still cause some to fall behind? And what can actually cause those kind of, those businesses left behind in these kind of situations?
Right. There's going to be so many reasons why some are going to excel and some are going to be left behind. It is a comparable situation back in the US whenever we started implementing electronic health record systems. and we started mandating security rules around how electronic health record systems and PHI has to be handled and taken care of. There were a lot of small medical practices, independent doctors who were absorbed by, sold out to hospital systems, to other management entities, because they did not have the skill, time, or capabilities, or the budgets to be able to, or even an interest in dealing with this new world that was being imposed upon them. So there were small practices closed, others merged, all those kinds of things happen. The same thing's going to happen here with the CMMC, because there are going to be those small shops that are making. I used to provide services to an outfit here in North Carolina. One of the things they were doing was the retrofits for the Humvee doors, for putting ballistic bulletproofing the doors more, putting the armored doors up, upfitting, upgrading those. And that was a big deal. But then they had another subsection where what they were doing was textile work under a contract. And that wasn't making nowhere near the same type of money. So today, just knowing what I knew about their operations, if they were still what they were today, what they were then, they would make the decision to completely either sell that textile operation or just stop at wholesale. That part of the business would just stop the function, because they wouldn't have the capability, the interest into putting in the time and the effort to do what they needed to do there. So there'll be a lot of those where there will be the little sub functions of the business that might be shuttered or sold off as a resource. There may be machine shops come together. I hope what I see is kind of a co-op approach, where some of them start coming together and sharing the resources and the IT stacks needed in order to be able to hit these requirements, which would be an interesting business model that is kind of close and similar to the MSP model. It's just not only are you, coming as an MSP to do what you're doing, but you're actively grouping together these smaller types of businesses in a way and encourage them to cross share, so that not only they can afford it, but also, are there opportunities for you to operationalize, scale, and increase your margins by,
compliance as a service.
Yeah.
Well, wonderful stuff. Lewis, thank you once again for joining us today. And if anyone watching has any further questions about what we've spoken about in the stream, what is the best way for them to reach out to you?
You can always reach out on LinkedIn. You'll find me there at The Security Pope. You can catch me on Twitch every once in a great while there as well. Might be doing some live coding or something. And as always, you can just find me via email at lewis.pope@enable.com. Or as we put more and more content out, pay attention to the YouTube channel over from Enable. You might find some extra goodies over there here and there. We'll also be making some new announcements in the new year. I'll be, security has been my main purview, but I'm going to be now operating more underneath security and compliance. And we'll also be doing some, I'll be doing some new office hours, content generation, all new things for the new year. So keep an eye out for that.
Wonderful stuff. Well, thanks everyone for joining, and we'll catch you next time. See you later.